All right. So we're going to give it a few minutes for everybody to kind of roll in, but I've started the recording, so mind your P's and Q's.
Sounds good.
Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hello, nice to meet you. Doing good, thank you.
Good to meet you as well.
Yeah, hello, hello.
Here's a familiar face. How you doing, Ryan?
Got some nerd power on this call. I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to give it a few minutes so everybody has a chance to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
That's perfect. So we're using the Meet platform this time for the first time for webinars. So we're giving it a go. It should be positive. So fingers crossed. We tested it a bit and everything looked good. So it should be easy peasy. All right. Oh yeah, I see we've got the action, so you can thank you, Michelle, for clicking on the emoji there. And you can start seeing those fly by. Look at that. Yeah, so it's pretty fun. Should be easy.
People are having a good time with the emojis.
Yeah.
Give it about one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll have some stragglers that'll come in, but I think it's fair to get started here.
I love it.
Is that showing full screen? No.
Not yet.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Hopefully we have a lively and impactful discussion around how artificial intelligence is changing the face of learning reinforcement. Basically, there's many different ways that AI has opened up new ways of doing things. And we thought it would be a good idea to bring in some subject matter experts and people that use generative AI to support them in learning and development reinforcement. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panel. Here we have Lisa. Lisa, would you like to say a few things?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Excited to have a robust discussion on generative AI and what it's going to mean for our industry. I'm currently head of product management at Sandler Systems. We do sales performance training and development for individual contributors and sales leaders. And I've been in the space for about 12 years and really enjoy getting into the weeds of content development and setting strategy for training. So it's exciting to be here.
All right. Thank you very much, Lisa. And Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, morning, afternoon, everybody. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, so been working with AI is almost since I found it a few years ago, and been using it to help my team, and actually both professionally and personally. I've been using AI to just help accelerate my learning and those around me. So happy to be here and to add to the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt.
Awesome. And so, hi, Doug Shalene here, and so I'm head of product for MindMarker. And I come from Silicon Valley. I've spent most of my time in early stage startups and some larger companies, Meta, DirecTV, and I've been leveraging AI for many different areas of work and technology. And for the last year, I've been working here at MindMarker to help use generative AI to be able to make learners learn better, create better engaging content, as well as working with leveraging the technology to help instructional designers to create great products and technology. So this is kind of the area that I'm focusing in on. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and see where we can take it.
All right. Thank you, Doug. So I'm Richard Roach. I'm moderating the webinar today, and I've actually been working on reinforcement since my Miller-Hyman days, so going on about 8-9 years. It truly is a passion of mine. I really like to help organizations really recognize behavior change over time and get our learners what they need. I often use generative AI sometimes when I'm stuck for a marketing message, or I'm creating a demonstration so that people can see how MindMarker works with the reinforcement. And so really just use it as another part of my brain so that I can lean on that rather than our internal resources. So if you guys aren't familiar with Google Meet, we would like to, have engaging conversation throughout the webinar. So if you see here, you can just click on that button down there for the live chat, and you can send us any questions you have as we're going through the webinar and the discussion. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So how is AI being used in learning reinforcement, right? So we're going to cover three major areas. I know we can, dig in a lot deeper on a lot of these issues, but right now we just kind of want to open up the discussions and, share our experience and learn about you as well. So the three areas will be in creating reinforcement content. How do we use generative AI for adaptive learning paths? And then how can we up our game with gamification and generative AI? So Lisa, I think I'd like to start with you, as you have a lot of experience in this area. How do you ensure the quality and accuracy of AI-generated content, especially when the learning's complex or highly specialized information needs to be conveyed?
Hey, Rich. Yeah, this is a really interesting question. And I think that we're still learning a ton about how to do this the right way. So some of the best practices when it comes to generating AI content that you want to be thinking about is which generative AI platform you're using. And is it a paid version or is it a free version? Because most of the free versions, they are going to be taking any information you're putting into it and potentially using it to train a larger language model. So the first thing is be careful about what you put into it to generate any content. The other thing is, they hallucinate. That's the term that kind of has been sticking in terms of these generative AIs thinking of predicting what's next. So if you're asking for great content on the latest trends in business acumen for salespeople, it is going to predict what it thinks that text is. But if it's citing data or benchmarks, you're going to want to make sure it can point you to the source documentation, and not all of them can do that right now. So the general rule of thumb is if you are going to be feeding information into one of these generative AIs, maybe think about where you're doing that. If you're using a paid version like ChatGPT 4 or Plus, you have some protections in terms of the data that you're putting into there. Make sure you read through your data protection agreement. You may even have something that's called a vector database. So this is something that many organizations are looking at building to create AI agents for themselves for content development. So I have a knowledge base of intellectual property at Sandler. We have all of our techniques that we use to help salespeople win more, have better conversations with their clients. And we're putting all of that chunked down into text into a vector database that sits between a query interface and the large language model that's helping predict what can come next. And that's where you can really get to some of that magic with generative AI helping you without running into copyright issues or hallucinations, because then you're telling it to go to a specific data set. So those are just some of the things that you want to think about. Now, that's not to say you can't use it to refine good content. So if I already have instructional materials for an instructor-led session, or maybe it's a job aid that a client gave me that they want to have reinforcement developed for, if I have one of those walled off instances, I can give that to the AI and say, recommend breaking this down into small pieces for reinforcement, as long as I know it's not going to go train the larger model. So those are some of the things that you might want to think about as you're creating your content. Any question? Are we doing questions at the end? Sorry.
Yeah.
We're doing both.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to raise their hand, we would certainly appreciate the live discussion.
So I'd love to ask a follow-up question on that, Lisa. I mean, so as you're training, so you're saying you're not actually taking a large language model and training your models. You're basically taking your content, you're digesting it into using, different form. I'm not sure what formats you're using, but you're bringing it down into different texts and creating embeddings, and then using that to then use it as a query to the different models. Are those models hosted? Are you using models that are hosted online, or are you actually hosting them on your own platform, on your own infrastructure?
We're still working on all the infrastructure for that. We're focusing on just the database right now. But I believe that we are just going into the larger, bolting onto ChatGPT 4 or 5, depending on if they, depending on the contracting that goes through there. But that's how it could work, because I would say that it depends on the level of privacy you want. If you're going to be hosting internally and it's going out, but many organizations, you're not going to have the funding or investment to build your own LLM, right? So you're going to bolt on to one of the ones that exist. And how you want to do that is largely driven by your organization's security policy.
Yeah, and maybe the question was a little more nuanced in that, you can take an external model and then you could, like, for example, Llama 2 or something like that, and then you can take that model and bring it in-house, and you don't have to create it, because creating it is what's expensive, right? But then you can host it locally. Are you, or some of your clients saying, hey, I want you to actually host it in your own infrastructure instead of just using, say something like ChatGPT 4, even though they may have their
we haven't run into any clients who are specifically asking for that. What we are looking at doing as a training organization is figuring out our middleware, so we could bolt onto if the client has it hosted internally, or if they're using the publicly available models, we can interface with anything and create their chat agent.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
I also think a lot of clients don't know what they don't know yet. And we're kind of in the wild west of AI, and in the future,
depends on
a lot more. Yeah.
That's a really good call, Matt, because it depends on how conservative or risk averse your legal department is for a lot of the stuff, as well as your data and security policies. So those are just some big considerations to be aware of. When you think about your typical instructional designers who are looking to just, how do I make my job easier, right? It might be giving those publicly available models, maybe like a Bing or Google Bard, just some prompts, right? So I need to develop a reinforcement program. What's the cadence I should be thinking about? Now, MindMarker, I know, has some really great content on how you do the cadence, how you structure all of that. But that's how you can use generative AI to help you break down. And then there are a bunch of really cool tools out there like Gamma that can actually help you build content. So there's some really cool stuff out there.
Actually, so I was just going to say, what are some cool tools that you're using that are helping create the content, right?
Well, I know we're all eagerly awaiting Articulate AI. They just announced that this fall that it's coming, right? So that one's, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. In the meantime, my team personally, we're using ChatGPT Plus. So we have that as a private while we work on building our own, generative chat agent. And then we are also using Synthesia for AI videos. That's a little bit different. It's not AI generated, but it's in the realm of all of that cool new wave of tech. Some of the other cool ones I've seen, I mentioned Gamma. It creates presentations for you with a couple of prompts on what you want to create a presentation about. Those are some of the really cool and creative ones. And then I know a lot of the other authorware platforms are coming out with their own assistants, like Powtoon has some stuff that's really cool. Beyond, I know, is introducing some AI, generative AI capability as well to ingest PowerPoints and then create really cool videos. I've also seen Docebo Shape, I think is their platform that does it. So I've seen lots of them out there where you can upload static content and it creates more dynamic content out the other end.
Very cool.
For that, Lisa. So to the end of, like, everybody's trying out and we're in a new frontier, would love to hear from the group. You can see how to answer the polls. I'm going to go ahead and launch this for a few seconds, about 15, 20 seconds. And would love to see, how you guys are using AI in your content creation process for reinforcement.
So we click on the bottom right to get to the tabs, and then there's a poll, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we have one, what is generative AI? Few people use it sometimes. One person uses it for all learning and reinforcement. All right. Thank you for that, guys. Appreciate it. So then, next question is, we're going to talk a little bit adaptive learning paths. So, Doug, I know you have a lot of experience, creating adaptive learning, and you can go from the organizational level the whole way down to the individual level. So my question to you is, what strategies do you use to strike the right balance between challenging learners and ensuring they do not become overwhelmed or frustrated?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's two components, right? One is, what is the end goal for the organization? And the other one is, what is the end goal of the individual, right? So if those two are aligned, then you have great synergy and great success. And so, from my background at Meta, I think I've always thought about, thinking at the end user, in this case, for the learner at the center. So being able to focus on the learner, what is it that the learner needs to do to be successful in his job? And so if it's a brand new, let's say a salesperson coming onto an organization, they need to learn the methodology that the company is using for sales. They need to learn the products. They need to learn about the type of customers that they're learning. And so adaptive learning is really just a fancy word of saying, based on where the learner is at the different stage in their growth inside the organization, how do we deliver and ensure that they are able to get the training that they need at the right time? And so in the initial stages is identifying, hey, where are you in that learning cycle, and deliver some training. Over time, we can test how they do and what they're learning and how they're performing in the job, looking at external metrics, whether it's performance reviews or their closing rates or what have you, and then being able to use that to be able to say, okay, here's additional training that is required for this learner and in this case, the salesperson, to be able to go to the next type of training that they need to do. So, and we all learn differently, right? I think that initially we can have programs that are the same for everybody. And that's what we've been doing as an industry for many years, right? I think that as with these tools, with generative AI, what we have is the ability to be able to say, hey, this learner learns better in this way. He's more visual. So we need to be able to have more of a visual type of, maybe a synthesia type video that is delivered to be able to have the content. Somebody may be more auditory, so be able to have more repetitive way of communicating the information to them. So adaptive learning is like, what is the content? It's, at least what we're trying to build here is say, hey, how do we adapt the content, as well as how do you adapt the mode in which you deliver the content? There's a lot of fun things that we can see. Like you can say, hey, create a training program that is being delivered in the voice of Dr. Seuss, right? Or it could be delivered in the voice of Shakespeare, so so it could be a fun way to learn. And we all know that, we all learn better when we are having fun doing something
right.
or having a challenge and there's some friction. So between those two areas is how do we create an adaptive program that is having that learner at the center, understanding what their needs are and how they learn. So I think that the possibilities or the capabilities that we have now with generative AI to create programs that are more focused on individual users is it's a huge opportunity that we have in front of us. I think anyway, so that's kind of how I see, the evolution happening. I'd love to see, hear what others are doing. I don't know, Matt, or Lisa, what are you guys seeing in the market as well, or what's your perspective on adaptive learning, right?
To quickly pick, I don't know if there's a difference between personalized AI and adaptive learning pathways. I think they're pretty synonymous, but I like personalized AI. I think it's about the same, right? I don't know if we agree with it. Yeah, all right. For me, and to highlight two things that Doug was alluding to, one was getting people into flow state. So my background's in neuroscience, and part of my job as director of design at DX is how do I get learners in that flow state where things aren't too challenging or to turn off, but not too easy, where they just want to blow it off and they just run through it. Right. And that's one of the cool things that this tool, adaptive personalized AI, lets you do is it will change depending on where the learner is. So one of the things Doug was talking about that I love is you need to assess prior knowledge. Where are they at in their learning journey so we can meet them where they're at? I mean, we talk about equitable leadership here at DX Learning. It's the same thing. How do you become an equitable AI almost? How do you meet learners where they're at? So you can get them to not have such a high cognitive load, but also get them into that flow state where they feel like they want to get to that next level. They want to actually show up and learn. And fun and engagement is what the next topic we'll get into as well.
Yeah, Michelle, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Matt, how you were thinking about the assessments to figure out that individual learning journey. Well, like, how do you do that? Is that also an AI or is that a manual process?
There's 3, 4, 5 ways to do it, unfortunately or fortunately. I mean, for us in our particular world, we always gauge learners. So we'll get HRIS data as much as we can so we know what level they're at. Are they director level? Okay, well, we're going to need to put them in a higher level than somebody that maybe is a new manager, for example. So different tracks. But there's a lot of different ways. I mean, I like doing an assessment in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end as well. So based off that middle assessment, we can also use that validation loop to change and course correct to make sure they're getting in that right level. I know, Lisa, you want to jump in here too?
Yeah, and this is something that I am deep in the weeds on right now. Sandler partners with a couple of different assessment providers, and so we actually do that assessment up front. But we also do a benchmark survey. So we're not only assessing innate competencies, traits, skills. So we're doing that inventory at the beginning, and then we are also collecting performance data. So specifically for salespeople, so those have a lot of great lagging indicator data, not always the greatest leading indicator data. So things like win rate, conversions, deal size, deal velocity, those types of things. But then also benchmarking talents or those innate traits as well as learned competencies. Then what we do is we actually focus the content recommendations based off of a matrix of those things in terms of their exposure to Sandler content, as well as their tenure in the role, as well as the competencies. So there's 3 factors that go into it. Anytime you're seeing these prescriptive learning journeys, the key thing as a consumer that I've learned is that you want to ask, how are the decisions being made? Because ultimately, people are still at the back end of a lot of these AI things in terms of, yes, the system will automate all of the recommendations, but a person made a choice about how that prep path will go. So that might help kind of demystify how some of this happens. I don't know, does that help?
Yes, definitely. I mean, obviously, this is all a lot of talking and not so much showing. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. There you go. So my learning path would need to be altered for sure, because I hear you, but until I see it, it's difficult for me to kind of comprehend.
Yeah, and I think
Me
that's
too.
where Yeah, exactly. And so think about like where AI could take us in 6 months, just based off of the fact, like the pace of this. It's going to take this recording and then say, Michelle, she asked a question about, I'd love to see what this looks like mapped out. And generative AI could come up with an image for you in terms of what that might look like from assessment to skill mapping based off of what we talked about. So I feel like that's coming. We're not that far away from where we're headed.
Yeah, no, super exciting. Thank you.
I see that we had a question from Sunil on the chat, and I think that was probably to you, Lisa, when you were talking about how you use vector databases. I think the question is, understand correctly, the vector database hosts all of your proprietary content. What kind of technical expertise skills is needed for this, and how do you convince clients about the issues that using this will not expose their content? I think you talked about that last one, but I think the skills is probably one area that.
Yeah, the skills, we're actually using a vendor ourselves to do that. So I don't have the technical skills on my team. So I'm not entirely sure how to speak to that. But if you want to take a look, I can send some links to Rich in terms of how I've been getting smart about this as a follow-on to this chat. I can see if I can pull something up. But in terms of what we needed to do was convert all of our content to text. Because that's what the vector database is going to read. And I believe PDF is the preferred format. And then you break it down into chunks, you tag the chunks. And so then it's got all the metadata to pull up the exact content you want to reference. In terms of convincing clients, in terms of not exposing their content to the open LLMs, we're looking at implementing a prompt obfuscation, I think that's the right word, ability, so that it basically blocks out anything that's super proprietary before it goes to the large language model, and then it gets filled back in as it returns to the learner. So there's a couple of different ways to go about that.
Yeah, thank you. I know we have a couple minutes left here. Rich, I don't know if there was another question here, right?
So we're going to run another poll. And so we're curious from the audience, what are the main challenges or limitations you've encountered with adaptive learning reinforcement? So we're just going to run that poll for 15 seconds about. I'd love to see, what y'all have been working on. All right, give a few more seconds. All right. So we're pretty widely dispersed. It looks like, all of the above has the most votes out of anybody. Balancing challenge and frustration for the learners is also an important one. But yeah, I mean, all of these things have been issues that we've been trying to deal with. And I think generative AI is really gonna, get us to where we need to go to understand our learners and deliver the right content in the right moment with the right rigor, frequency, duration of time. There's so many different variables when it comes to adaptive learning that, we need the help, right? We have a lot of systems, we have great logic with our instructional designers, and we have ways of going about it. But to be able to do it in real time, I think that generative AI is going to be really helpful, right? So for the final component, I think Matt, he has a lot of experience when talking about gamifying experiences. So how does gamification contribute to increasing learner engagement and motivation in training reinforcement program? And more importantly, where can AI move the needle with gamification?
My answer is nearly everywhere. I shamelessly play a lot of video games, and video games are, like almost anything, can be very addictive. In fact, they're made to be very addictive. They're made to keep your time there. And I don't want to weaponize what AI can do for the learning pathway, but there is some steps that we can take to make AI our friend and to make it better for the learner. For example, we know that we can use AI in the adaptive personalized pathways to help learners become more adapted to whatever that learning is. So we can use it as reward systems. So gamifications can come in many different forms. One of them can be positive recognition, getting badges, getting notifications. AI can actually is learning about you as a person. Now it's your numbers to them, but based on that, it can actually give you recommendations or know, hey, I'm going to give this person a little nudge here. Oh, I know that I'm going to separate this out from a time management perspective. This person seems very busy. Instead of giving them daily micro actions or recognition, I'm going to do this every week, right? Some of the other forms can be variable rewards. So it is known that in behavioral neuroscience, if you don't know what kind of reward you're getting, a small reward or a big reward, that'll get you more excited. You can use operant conditioning to help people move more in positive directions, away from harm. Really, at the end of the day, our brain, this beautiful organ between our two ears, is a survival machine, and it moves towards pleasure and away from pain. So as AI starts learning what is more pleasurable in some forms or fashion to certain learners, it can actually adapt to form that right achievement and progression systems for that particular individual.
Fight or flight, right?
Or freeze, yeah. I mean, they just keep adding
freeze, right.
onto that, yeah.
Yeah.
The last part to add there that I think is really cool and people are getting into is the social interaction piece. You talk about oxytocin, a huge neurochemical. It's called the hugging hormone, but now that we're in a virtual world, it's that virtual hug. I can't believe I'm using that phrase, but how do you get people to actually receive virtual hugs, maybe not just from AI, but social interactions from people, right? How do you create that to have a social reward system in the brain? We can create leaderboards. We can create a bunch of different methodologies to help people get excited to learn and to continue to learn.
That's right. Excellent. Thanks for that, Matt. And yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. Also to spark human connection, right? I think a lot of people, when I've been talking to instructional designers about artificial intelligence and using generative AI for creation, for connecting with the learners, it often comes up like they sometimes feel like maybe this is going to replace me, or maybe this is going to be too mechanized and we're going to lose the learners at some point. But what it actually can do, it can spark human intervention, right? It gets you excited. You're talking around the coffee cooler. You're reaching out via Microsoft Teams or whatever you use as a chat, right? So it's all about increasing that engagement and getting them motivated to socialize. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing so poorly in this. I need to talk to my manager, right? And create those mentorship type conversations as well, right?
Yeah, and I think that, when, tied to that is there's definitely the comfort and learning and, having it fun. But, if we all know in a game, it's all about going over challenges, right? Overcoming challenges, right? So there's that friction. It's like, oh man, I can't get out of this box, and how do I get over this hurdle? How do I not get killed when I first come onto? So that friction of like, it's really hard, but eventually when you overcome that, man, you learn that, right? And I think being able to apply those things into learning is I agree with you, Matt, is really key. And I think the opportunities are great with generative AI, right? Because you can go in and say, hey, write a training program on this module. It might be, I don't know, quadratic equation or something or whatever, and then create a Jeopardy game on this, or create a or Jeopardy like game, or create a trivia type game. And ChatGPT or any of the other tools are going to come back and give you the framework and the type of question. Now you still need to be able to organize. There's still some work to do, but it gives you the basis of that you can then use to create programs for that. So I think there's definitely a huge opportunity that we have in front of us, right? For being able to get people to learn and do behavior change.
The biggest thing, if you're using generative AI, that I've found really helpful is giving it a persona at the top of that chat. So telling it that it is an expert in instructional design, that you want it that
Mhm.
you want it to make sure that it's like including gamification and reward elements, and that the tone matches whatever tone of the training that you want to have for your specific audience. Then you tell it to do the specific task. And you can do that with any of these agents. But giving it that persona at the beginning can really help get you a better result in terms of what it provides back.
For that.
For sure.
Michelle, you raised your hand?
Well, I just wanted to make sure Matt doesn't use his AI to cheat. Oh, how do I jump over this bridge?
Of course not. I love challenges. I have a growth mindset. Okay, Michelle. For like 10 minutes, and then I cheat. Yeah, okay, fine. You got me.
I think it really depends on the context, right? Of like, what is cheating and how is that bad? For a lot of people that we're working with, it's, we're in business. The only cheating that might happen is if you're stealing proprietary intellectual property, which these platforms will do at this point. So you do want to be careful. But in terms of cheating your learners, I'm not entirely sure if I know your context. If it's an academic institution, if you're really doing rigorous knowledge testing, I know that there are some solutions that are coming to the market. I haven't really been paying attention because most of our stuff is open book. I want you to use the power of the internet to get smarter and better at your job. So I think it's
Exactly, Lisa.
Yeah.
That's music to my ears, because I think one of the things that is, when we're doing training programs and we do a quiz at the end, right? And then a customer may say, "Hey, but you're giving them the answer. They have the answer, so that means that that's cheating." And at the end of the day, what I always say is like, well, is the objective for them to learn because they're showing that they know it, right? So they're learning this stuff. Even they may call it cheating, but it's just basically it's not really cheating. They're just looking up the information so that they can use it at the right time, and eventually that creates that behavior change, right? So it's not cheating. I mean, once you stealing, I agree with you. That's one thing, but watch out with that. But if you're using learning and being able to find ways in different ways so you can get the information to get the right answer to do your job right, bam, that's the goal, right?
That's right. Yeah, so I'd like to open up a question to the group. We had a good, lively discussion. Thank you for all of our panelists. They did a great job. But what key takeaways do you have, and what can you apply to your job?
It's a poll, right?
To the group. No, it's not a poll. I decided to switch up.
Oh.
So we talked about, creating learning reinforcement content. We talked about adaptive learning, and then we talked about AI and gamification. So does anybody have anything that really stood out to them as, wow, that's something new, or something that you reiterated, something that you want to apply to your daily job? Michelle?
Surprise, surprise, Michelle has her hand up. You'll figure
We
that happens
appreciate the
often.
participation.
That happens often. I love the idea of the adaptive learning paths, and I think that's definitely something we're going to explore on our team here at Blue Point.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
JR just put in chat that AI is a component, but not the entire solution. We still need human creativity, and that is absolutely the case. I was at DevLearn in October, and there were a lot of people that were very nervous about AI and coming to take my job, and is my team going to get smaller? And I'm actually making an argument to increase my team, because generative AI means I can do more with less, but I still need those people to validate all of that content, make sure that it's QC'd correctly, and get it out the door. But like that middle part where you're kind of like coming from that initial design to something real, that gets so much faster. I think that's what I'm seeing it really happen.
100%. And not only that, but I think that because learning can now have a more direct impact on the business performance, you can see that it's moving the needle. And if it's moving the needle, you need to invest more on it so it can move the needle more. So I think to your point, I think more is coming as opposed to less, right?
I always like to say this about AI. To me, AI is like my super smart Ivy League PhD graduate who's my intern, which means no matter what they put out, it could be smart, beautiful, but I need to check on it, right? I need to make sure there is a human, and they saw me put it in there before. I don't even know what, I just made this up. It was like HFLV, human feedback validation loops. That's what I'm talking about. Make sure there's some human that's checking on the work. You can't just get something from your intern, take it to your boss and just say, here it is. You're going to want to review that, right?
Yeah, I think critical thought is really what's going to differentiate people that will figure out how to use AI as a portion of their brain, right? To keep from getting hung up and writer's block and, getting stuck with content or media, right? So just more and more tools at our disposal. Owen Lawler said, how are assessment and learning organizations going to deal with the hallucinations and validating content and assessment is done with rigor? Validate and reliable for the learning constructs we are testing for. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? So
I think it's the wild, wild west right now, Owen. And I know that we can talk more about that offline, but I think we're going to see an explosion of hallucinations and people trying stuff and not getting it right. So, just be aware of that as you guys see it. I know I've seen a couple of interesting marketing videos, like when you look at the Articulate AI announcement video, they're showing oh, you'll be able to create these avatars and everything with hand gestures. And I talked to the people at the booth. Oh no, those are real actors getting recorded in the studio with their hand gestures. So be skeptical.
I think there are psychometricians out there right now that are doing cartwheels, and they're probably freaking out is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. So definitely, if you're working with partners and others on this, check their credentials, ask for how they're doing their benchmarking for their data. That's going to be super important.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see an explosion of hallucinations and people that promise silver bullets. And then it'll start to course correct as there's more regulations. There's also the lawsuits that are going on right now with IP infringements, and AI is largely a self-regulating industry at the moment. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Those always work out.
Definitely going through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got just a few minutes left. Does anyone have any leftover questions or ideas they'd like to discuss?
Just a quick point of best practice that Lisa said in the very beginning. At the end of everything you ask, whatever you're using, write cite sources, 2 words, just write cite sources. And that way it'll say it at the end and it'll say, this is where I got it from. Check it yourself. The human still needs to be there, right? This is your PhD intern. You're not going to turn this in directly to your boss.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and especially the existing learning content to create reinforcement content, that's where if you can start with some good source material and ask it to break it down, turn it into a game, change it, modify it in some way, not originate the content. That's how you help with avoiding a lot of that, check your work, cite your sources. But again, just be cognizant about what you're asking it to do. If it's very generic soft skills training that's just kind of public domain IP, that's fine. But if it's anything proprietary about your business, definitely think about how you're feeding that information into the systems.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of the RAG methodologies, the retrieval augmented methodologies, for creating content is really taking shape right now, which is, how you take your content, how do you, just what you were saying, Lisa, is how you break out from a PDF, get your chunks, etc., but then validate what you have and chunkify it in different ways so that when you're asking questions or creating content from that content, it's putting guardrails around that. So I think those RAG strategies are really starting to take shape. There's quite a few companies that are creating these different pipelines and different formats that we can use to create content and minimize the hallucinations, because Yeah, it's definitely going to happen.
I put into the chat a link to a blog that I found really helpful that kind of just broke the whole process down in terms of how you create a retrieval, like your own agent, for lack of a better way to call it right now. It's just the step-by-step, how you even do the testing on it, to make sure that it is validating that what you put in there, it's coming back out the way you want it to. So I think that that's absolutely right, Doug. There's a lot to do in terms of validating that those are happening the way that you want them to.
Yeah, that's the Arise
Yeah.
platform. Yeah. No, I think that's a good one for sure.
For generating games,
I've tried. I don't think there's anything really good yet. The videos are coming, and I think after the videos there'll be some game design, but it's not there yet.
Is Runway doing videos yet? Because I know they can do.
They're doing videos.
They're doing videos, yeah.
Yep.
So Runway's another one.
All right. Well, we're at time. So thank you, panelists. I think we all learned a lot, and I think this is very engaging. Really appreciate everybody's participation, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to engage us in further conversation, or if you have questions. We're always available to help. All right.
Is there going to be another one?
We will have another one probably in January. We'll give people the holiday season to rest.
Awesome. I think there's a quick question here from Lee, maybe.
Yeah, Lee, you got your hand up?
Lee, you have your hand raised. Sorry about that.
Oh, wrong button.
Wrong button.
All
right,
right,
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of
Thank you. Cheers.
Okay.
All right. Shall we end it?
Yeah, you have to hit stop recording. It was telling me.
Mm-hmm.